بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. We continue with the series of the history and the origins of the Kalam theology of the Ash'aris and the Maturidis. So last time we spoke about the Maturidi group, how we started, in brief, the founder of the Maturidi or Maturidiyya and the stages that the Maturidi creed went through, or the school of the Maturidiyya. Today we'll be going through the article of our Sheikh Abu Iyad Amjad Rafiq Hafidhahullah Ta'ala, the title of the Risala, The History and Origins of the Kalam Theology of the Ash'aris and Maturidis, a useful handbook of historical facts and concealed realities. So everyone, I advise you, my brothers and sisters, to pay attention and to make sure you have a paper and a pen to write down the benefits, because what our Sheikh Abu Iyad Amjad Rafiq did, he went back to the how these ta'wilat of Allah's names and attributes, this deviation started. Because the Maturidis, Ash'aris, they claim they're for the Salaf al-Salih in Aqeedah, but the reality, the history exposed them. They don't have nothing to do with Salaf al-Salih. Rather, they oppose the Salaf al-Salih. And even Qurtubi mentioned that in his tafsir and his kitab al-Asna في شرح أسماء الله الحسنى والصفات العلى. He mentioned that, for example, Allah is above the arsh حقيقة. He said that what the Salaf believed. And he mentioned Ahl Kalam, including Ashari, they opposed that. He mentioned Ashari, Ahl Kalam. Then he said what the Salaf believed about Allah being above the arsh حقيقة. So a tarikh is very important. The history is very important. Because some doubts, for example, just to give an example for you to understand, sometimes in order for you to understand the shubha or to refute the shubha, there's many layers above the shubha. So what you have to do, you have to remove those layers. For example, the issue of Prophet Muhammad getting married to Aisha. Where this shubha came from? It never existed all the time. It goes back to a British historian, Orientalist in the 19th century, when the British invaded Egypt. He's the first person to come with this doubt. Before that, for 1,300 years, no one had a problem of the marriage Prophet Muhammad married Aisha. No one. No Christians, no Jews, no atheists, no Hindus, no one. You see? And why? Because the Western world, because of the they're starting creating schools and nurses and so on. So the young girls, the girls start becoming older way later than before. So inshallah, our brother Abu Kanza will start reading inshallah ta'ala, and whatever is needed to be clarified or elaborate more, I will do that inshallah ta'ala. Barakallahu fiqh.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Okay, so the history and origins of the Kalam theology of the Ashari and the Maturidiyya, a useful handbook of historical facts and concealed realities. And this is found on asharis.com and maturidis.com. So Yahya bin Ammar, who died 422 Hijri, and Shaykh al-Islam Abu Ismail al-Harawi, who died 481 Hijri, said, Al-Ash'ariyya makhanith al-Mu'tazila. Al-Ash'ariyya makhanith al-Mu'tazila. The Asharites or the Ash'ira are the effeminates of the Mu'tazila, meaning they're somewhat, lenient towards, the behavior of women.
Meaning they're not real men.
Not real men. ليس لهم رجولة.
Yeah, they're not real men to come out openly and say what they really believe. Jahmiya, they were real in their disbelief. Jahmiya, al-Mu'tazila, into some extent. But they were not real. They believe. They were not telling the people what they really believe. Who are they like that? Who is now like this? The Ashari and the Maturidis. They're not real. They hide. They don't say what they really believe. And as Fakhruddin al-Razi and al-Ghazali, Abu Hamid mentioned that. He said, if we teach our Aqeedah to the Awam, then the Awam and Muslims will leave Islam. They will become atheists, Malahida. Both of them mentioned that. And we'll bring the quotes, the reference.
Even one of the contemporaries of Imam Ahmad, he mentioned those that dislike knowledge. He called them makhanith in one of his lines of poetry. He says, رحلت أطلب أصل العلم مجتهدا وزينة المرء في الدنيا الأحاديث. لا يطلب العلم إلا باذل ذكر وليس يبغضه إلا المخانيث. لا تعجبن بمال سوف تتركه فإنما هذه الدنيا مواريث. So he goes on to say, رحلت أطلب أصل العلم مجتهدا. I went out seeking the great foundations of the knowledge. وزينة المرء في الدنيا الأحاديث. And the adornment, the beautification of the man in this world is ahadith. Yeah? And then he goes on to say, no one despises this knowledge except one who's from the makhanith, those who are effeminate, have behavior somewhat similar to women. Basically, men seek knowledge. This is the point he was trying to somewhat get at. Yeah. And he goes on to say, the foundation of the theology of the Jahmiya, the Mu'tazila, the Ashari and the Maturidiyya is to impose the rationale or rationally deduced conception of divine perfection. Yeah? To impose the rationally deduced conception of divine perfection, spoken of by Aristotle and Plato upon the text of the Quran and Sunnah. The dismissal of hadiths pertaining to sifat as speculative knowledge only. The claim of, I think it's algorithms or majaz, that which is,
metaphorical.
Yeah, metaphorical. Yeah, allegorical, some say. Allegorical. In the text of the attributes, the claim of the meanings of the text of the attributes being unknowable, tashabuh, and likewise ta'wil, figurative interpretation. And finally, tafweed, assumed ignorance and consignment of the meaning. So there's three things there. Tashabuh, ta'wil, and tafweed. And they are all mechanisms that were invented to help achieve the goal of imposing the language of rational divine perfection of the likes of Aristotle, Plato, and the Hellenized Jews, Christians, and Sabians upon the speech of Allah and His Messenger.
Hellenized Jews and the Christians, those who were influenced by the philosophy. Those who left the way of the Torah, the Yahud and the Nasara, the Injil, and they start explaining the Torah and Injil with the Greek philosophy.
Okay, they were forced to do this because they made this conceptual baggage and its associated terminology the foundation, the asl for a so-called rational proof, huduf al-ajsam, to show that the universe had a beginning and hence must have a creator. However, because they employed this language, they had to remain true to its necessities.
So what is the history when the Islam spread out and the Muslim came face to face with the Romans, the Byzantine, the Egyptians, the Indians, and those nations, they had philosophy of them, or the Jews and the Christians as well. So Muslims are debating them, and they start debating atheists and philosophers. So now to prove that the universe, there is a creator, they focus on proving the universe has a beginning. But they invented a method to prove this universe have a beginning. And the method called huduth al-ajsam. Okay? The huduth al-ajsam is translated to that, ajsam mean the bodies, huduth coming into existence. Yeah,
the occurrence of like Ajsam.
Yeah, Ajsam, the Arad as well. Yeah. Yes. So the Sheikh is going to speak about it more in depth, inshallah.
However, because they employed this language, they had to remain true to its necessities, which meant they could only speak about the creator of the universe in terms of affirmation and negation. On the basis of this language and its necessities clash with the Quran and the Sunnah.
So which language? Which language? Huh? حدوث الأجسام, the language of the philosophers. The حدوث الأجسام. So they want to prove the universe has a beginning, to prove there is a creator, and so on. So to be true to their method, they had to create mechanisms because they've noticed their argument clearly oppose the Quran and the Sunnah. Either they have to reject Quran and Sunnah or explain the Quran and the Sunnah in the way that goes in line with the method. For example, in our time, science. You see some Muslim twisting verse from the Quran to go in line with so-called scientifically proven. You with me? So science in our time, just what happened 600 years ago with the Greek philosophy. When the Muslims were munbahirun, they were amazed with Greek philosophy. Therefore, the only way to prove Islam is the truth by using Greek philosophy. And now if Greek philosophy become a criteria to establish Islam is the truth, therefore, whatever go against Greek philosophy, either we have to reject it or explain it away to go in line with the Greek philosophy. Do you understand now? Yeah. Now, likewise with science.
Even nowadays, you see people, they hang on to like Plato. They never read his books, but they still mention him on a day-to-day conversation. You see people display pictures, Plato.
The Western world is still
amazed by him.
Yeah, but still, even though they try to claim they moved on from Greek philosophy, but in reality, the Western academia is based upon that. Yeah.
This language and its necessities clash with the Quran and the Sunnah. Thus, the invention of mechanisms to make the Quran and the Sunnah conform to their so-called reason, which is really based on the metaphysics of Aristotle, discussion of Jawhar or Jawahir, Ajsam and A'rad, substances, bodies, and incidental attributes, known as Aristotle's 10 categories, or al-Manqulat al-Ashar. Here they are, the 10 categories of Aristotle. The first category deals with what something is. Substance, Jawhar. All created entities are substances or bodies. The rest are incidental attributes, A'rad, which deal with how it is. Quantity, Al-Kam, dimensions, length, breadth, and width. Quality, I believe that is Al-Kayf, perceived characteristics, color, shape, and so on. Relation, Al-Idafa, how it is in relation to others, above, below, right, left, and what have you. Place, I think it's Al-Ain, where it is. Time, matter, Al-Ain, not Al-Ain, Al-Ain.
Yeah, where it is.
Yeah. Time, matter, answering when, characteristics of the substance, temporal characteristics of the substance, and position, al-wad', how its parts are ordered in relation to each other, al-action, al-af'al, acting, what a substance is doing, affection, I can't read that one, a substance being acted upon, and then also having al-mulk, what the substance is wearing or possessing.
Which one? You talk about affection?
Affection.
ينفعل.
ينفعل, yeah. I couldn't read that.
يفعل, so action يفعل, and affection ينفعل.
ينفعل.
Yeah, ينفعل.
The argument is that since incidental attributes cannot exist on their own, so the argument is that since incidental attributes cannot exist on their own, can only in here exist within a body, substance, and since attributes, sifat, must have had a beginning because they cannot exist on their own, then likewise the bodies that possesses or possess them must also have a beginning, because if they possess something that must by necessity have a beginning, bidayah, then they too must, by necessity, also have a beginning. And since all bodies in the universe must be thereby or originated, and an originator is therefore established, however, when you now come to describe this originator, if you describe anything to this creator which comes under the incidental attributes a'rad as categorized by Aristotle, then you have likened this creator to all the bodies and thereby falsified the very proof you use to establish his existence.
So repeat this again.
I'll repeat it. However, yeah, however.
So no, the argument is that since incidental attribute cannot exist on their own, can only in here exist within a body. For example, an attribute, for example, a color, blue. You don't see blue color walking the street. Blue color has to be exist in something. Right here? Yeah. So within a body, substance. And since attribute must have had a beginning because they cannot exist on their own, then likewise the bodies that possess them must also have a beginning. Okay? Because someone put them together. Look, this corrupted argument, yeah? So attributes, body, you know, so for example, like we said, the color blue doesn't exist by itself. It has to be embodied in something. It has to exist in a body. That body is a pen, yes? Okay. Blue pen. Then also goes on the beginning because they cannot exist on their own. And likewise, the bodies that possess them must also have a beginning. Because if they possess something that must by necessity have a beginning, then they too must by necessity also have a beginning. And since all bodies in the universe must be thereby originated, an originator is therefore established. So there's the argument. Therefore, this universe is mumkin al-wujud. MashaAllah. So all these takhabbutat. Now, it goes on to mention an originator is therefore established. This is a very simple presentation of the argument. It has a finer details. There's more details to it, but it's a general one. However, when you now come to describe this originator, either you have to go and guess because remember, Allah has attributes and Allah has an essence. Like here, you're not saying because if something has attribute and essence, therefore someone put them together. Look at billah, this corrupted argument. However, when you now come to describe this originator, if you ascribe anything to this creator, which comes under the incidental attributes a'rad, as categorized by who? Not by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not by Ibrahim alayhi salam, not by Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, not by Isa, not by Yaqub, not by Aristotle, Aristotelis. By Aristotle, then you have likened this creator to all the bodies and thereby falsified the very proof you used to establish his existence. Yeah, carry on. Do you understand now? Yeah, this is the danger of these arguments. That's why the one Muhammad Hijab, you have parts. Okay, do you remember Muhammad Hijab when he's speaking to guy? You have a hand, yes, and you have a body. So your hand is in need of your body. So therefore, you are created. Okay, the person said, but you could believe Allah has a hand in reality, and Allah has an essence. So now Allah is created. Where to get this? Why? Because they're not confident with the Quran. They're not proud with the Quran. Go listen to their debate. Muhammad Hijab and Ali Dawood, this atheist 2 weeks ago. Nearly 2 hours. No verse in the Quran, nothing. Nothing. He's saying the universe always existed. He's telling him, no, the universe came into existence. And just that Ibn Taymiyyah said, the universe came into existence, some things were established. Anyone trying to negate it is kadab. Barakallahu fikum.
Then he goes on to say, there are only 2 ways. Either the proof you used is false and hence rejected, or the proof...
Sorry, so he goes on here to say, number 2 has footnotes. This proof, understand?
All right, so, or the proof you use is true in the Quran and Sunnah must be distorted to agree with it. So he goes on to say, yeah, this is the explanation. This proof of huduf al-ajsam leads to falsehood because certain assumptions are used to complete it. From them, the claim of an endless chain of events being impossible.
Okay, this one you can leave it.
Leave it.
Yeah, this one خلاص. This one is talking about something I was talking about. We believe Allah, the Creator, all the time, subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, we don't believe Allah was static before. Allah fa'al lima yurid. This is a different topic. But yeah, carry on.
And then he goes on to say, yes, all the proof you use is true and the Quran and Sunnah must be distorted to agree with it. This is where the alleged conflict between reason, aql, and revelation, naql, arises.
That's how it started. The Sahaba never had problem with Allah's names and attributes. Ya Ashari, ya MATURIDI, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, and Umar ibn al-Khattab, Uthman ibn Affan, and Ali ibn Abi Talib, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, when they were sitting in the masjid and reciting Ar-Rahman wa al-Arsh istawa, did they say, he's not in a place, don't think he's a body, he's not parts, he's partless, spaceless, timeless, none of that. Your poison speech. You know, that's why Imam Ibn Uthaymin said, where is the proof the Salaf agreed that Allah is above the Arsh? You know, the Sahaba, because everyone understood the Dahir of the ayah. And Al-Qurtubi said that is the Dahir of the ayah. And that's what the Salaf believed. حقيقة. And Allah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَقَالَتِ الْيَهُودُ يَدُ اللَّهِ مَغْلُولَةً غُلَّتْ أَيْدِيهِمْ الآية. Yeah, the Yahud say Allah's hand is what? Stingy. Yeah? So we affirm Allah has a hand the way befit His Majesty. لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. Sahaba, Nabi alayhi sallam never recited this verse. And this is Sahaba. Don't think he has a'dha, ajza. You know, all of this is, that's how we started. The aql goes in line with the naql.
I got that point as well.
Yeah.
And they are cursed for what they say. Rather, both his hands are extended and he spends how he wills. That's for another lesson, maybe.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Yes, sir.
And we just mentioned.
And which provides the basis?
Yeah. Naql arises and which provides the basis for the activity of the people of this innovated kalam in distorting the Quran and the Sunnah. This is what the Jahmiya did. This is what they did, i.e. the Jahmiya, when Ja'd bin Dirham and Jahm bin Safwan appeared in the Ummah. They came with the same thing that was being written and spoken of by the Hellenized Jews, Christians and Sabians such as Philo-Judaeus, I don't know.
Philo-Judaeus. Philo-Judaeus is a Jewish. They say one of the people that, one of the early Jewish scholars or rabbi spoke with these terms as well. And they have Augustine, a Christian one.
Augustine, 430 CE, and others centuries before Islam. So then they had to resolve this problem of the conflict between their so-called reason and revelation, which affirms an essence at that, names, asma, attributes, sifat, and actions, af'al, for Allah Jalla wa Ala. So the Jahmites, the Jahmiya were the most consistent. They denied everything. They said...
So now it's going to speak about the sects. Firaq. Now the Jahmiya. طيب تفضل أخي.
So the Jahmites were the most consistent. They denied everything. They said, we reject all names, attributes and actions for Allah. Otherwise, He would be a body. And they came up with a conception of a deity which exists only in the mind.
Yeah.
Something totally devoid of names and attributes. Devoid of names and attributes. Just like the philosophers whose idea is of a creator or a first cause or a prime mover.
So they call Allah prime mover. أو العلة الأولى. Like what the ulama say, أعلهم الله. العلة means the cause, but also means sickness. One of the scholars said, may Allah give them sickness. Like how they give sickness to the Muslims. With these terms, prime mover, first cause. Because even we don't use a first cause, because the first cause can be what? Just power. It caused it. No. You know, even the term of theist. We're not theists. We are Muslims. Theist can be deist. Deist, someone who believes there is God, but doesn't believe in the revelation whatsoever. He's mul'id. Because atheist is not just someone who doesn't believe Allah. Atheist comes different types. So if someone says you're a theist, said no, we are Muslims. We're not just theists. We don't accept this theist term. Theist is someone who believes in God. He can believe in God has no control over the universe. Many people come under this name. We are Muslims. The Hindus theists, yes, to them. Yeah. So we are Muslims. Barakallahu feekum.
That's why it's good to not accept their terms and conditions when entering into a conversation.
Yeah.
We're Muslim, alhamdulillah. And he goes on to say, they came up with the conception, just like the philosophers, the idea of the creator, first mover, prime mover. This is no more than the imaginary idea of oneness in the mind. So the Jahmites applied this principle coherently. They said that there is no deity above the throne because this is a direction, jihad.
Jihad, na'am.
And this necessitates a location, makan. And this necessitates occupation.
Maturidis, can you hear yourself speaking now? This Maturidis Ashari, can you hear yourself? This is Jahmiya, what they said. Maturidis Ashari, same thing. Makan, tahayyuz, Ar-Rahman wa Arsh istawa, the Quran and the Sunnah. That's why we're going to expose these Maturidis Ash'aris. No, we make videos, you're making mistakes in the Quran while you're on speaker's corner. No, we expose you ilmi. To know these people are Jahmiya. The Maturidis our times Jahmiyatun. Carry on.
And he goes on to say, yes, makan, and this necessitates occupation, tahayyuz, and this would render Allah a body, a jism. And they said that Allah will not be seen in the hereafter, because He would be seen in a direction, which would also render Him a body. They said that Allah does not have speech, kalam, and that the Quran is created because speech is an attribute of bodies, and is also that which means confinement by time.
By time. See, that's why it's very important, these classes. Why it's very important? When you hear someone say Allah timeless, spaceless, partless. Oh, Ibn Safwan speaking. That's not Nabi Sallallahu. See, so what are you doing? You are connecting the dots. See, there's the Quran that say Allah partless, spaceless, timeless. All these terms. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by timeless? What they meant to Allah timeless, to reject Allah's actions. Yes. See? So this is very important to know. If you say Allah is above the arsh, mean tahayyuz, mean makan, body, Jahmiya, someone speaking now. Prophet doesn't speak like that. Abu Bakr never spoke like that. Uthman ibn Affan never spoke like that. Umar al-Khattab, Khulafa al-Rashidin, Hasan al-Basri, Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, Ahmad ibn Hanbal al-Shaybani.
And then he said Allah has no name or names or attributes, and they would render Allah a body. So they denied everything. Until some of them even said that you cannot say Allah is a thing. Shay. It is important to note that the Jahmites or the Jahmiya were most consistent in applying these necessities. After them came Kalam groups that were built upon contradiction and incoherence. They basically played word games and were in the middle, neither taking a firm stance behind the philosophers and the Jahmiya, and nor taking a firm stance behind the prophets and messengers and their followers. The munafiqun.
Yeah.
Wavering between the two teams. So historically, some of the imams of the Salaf referred to them as makhanith, the effeminates, who were refusing to be full, mature men. Yahya bin Ammar, who died 422 Hijri, said the Mu'tazila are the makhanith of the Jahmiya, and the Ashari are the makhanith of the Mu'tazila. Hence, they were these sissies. I heard that word sometime.
Sissies is a person that is effeminate or cowardly.
Yeah, coward.
Jaban.
Jaban. Jubun, yeah. So they're makhanif in the middle with their kalam, not being consistent with it and going all the way like the Jahmites and the philosophers did, which is what is demanded from them, and nor leaving kalam altogether and being full men with the people of Sunnah, the followers of the revealed books and sent messengers.
So there's two groups here. As the Shaykh Abu Iyad, when I went to his class in Basira, he said there's two groups. Groups that following, remember, we talk about Jahmiya. Jahmiya, are they following Prophet and messengers? No. Who they following? Aristotle, Plato, the philosophers. So there's philosophers here in one side, and there's the prophets and messengers on this side. So now you're going to see, are Ashari and Maturidis follow of the prophets and messengers, or they are Makhanith, they're not real men, people. We are with the philosophers. They're mutakhabbitun. La ilaha ha'ula'i wa la ilaha ha'ula'. Either with this or with that.
So we have discussed the men, the Jahmites. Now we can discuss the various categories of the Makhanif, the sissies in the middle class, and try to pretend that they affirm the names. So they said, we accept Allah is Al-Alim, Al-Rahim, Al-Sami', and so on, but without the attributes of Ilm, Rahmah, and Sam.
Look, Junoon. He's like, the Sha'ir entered into the mosque, and he saw one of the Mu'tazila teaching that. He said, if I say you are told Allah, because anyone that opposes the Quran and Sunnah except Allah will make him look foolish.
So this is just sophistry, I believe it is.
Yeah, sophistry. Sophistry is a group of people that existed before Aristotle, and they debate anything. And a lot of them with these categories in order to know something exists and so on, which themselves, they try to refute corruption with another corruption.
Pure sophistry, yeah. They denied all attributes and actions for Allah and adopted a negative theology stance, which is where you caliphs in the early 3rd century. After this is the Mu'tazila, and after this the Mu'tazila became despised and dwindled. Yeah.
After Ahmad Rahmatullah exposed them, he humiliated them with the Quran and the Sunnah. They became, subhanallah, despised. Now we mentioned the Jahmiya. They are the asl, the followers of philosophers, and they were real men in their kufr, in their misguidance. They reject all Allah's names and attributes. They say we only describe Allah with existence. And that doesn't exist in reality, only in their minds. Then Mu'tazila, they're Makhanith. So there's different types of Makhanith. One of them Mu'tazila. Now we come into Kullabiyya. Yes. Then came Ibn Kullab.
Then came Ibn Kullab and a group with him. They ascribed to the Sunnah, but were weak and deficient in it, and were also given to disputation with the Jahmiya and the Mu'tazila. They accepted the foundations of that innovated Kalam and tried to argue by way of it. So they found a way to establish the attributes through reason. The 7 attributes of life, knowledge, hearing, seeing, speech, power, and will, and affirmed the ulu of Allah over His creation. And the sifat al-khabariyah, face, hands, eyes, which are mentioned in the Quran as well.
As many other attributes as well.
As many other attributes too. They refuted the Jahmiya and the Mu'tazila on the issue of Allah's ulu, sifat al-khabariyah, and His attributes, and had strong words in that regard.
What is sifat al-khabariyah? What is sifat al-khabariyah? Sifat al-khabariyah. No. Sifat al-khabariyah. Why is called khabariyah? Yeah, but why is called khabariyah? Because we only know it through the revelation. That's why it's called sifat al-khabariyah. Al-khabariyah means we only know it by revelation. There is no room for us to know by our sound reasoning, by our aql. Because there are some attributes that we can know about Allah by aql. For example, that is qawi, that exists. That is, what do you call it, sami', that is alim. Do you understand? But there's some attributes, like the hand and the face, we only know it by al-khabar. They call it sifat al-khabariyah. You only know it by revelation. Yeah.
However, they fell prey to some of the doubts, the shubuhat of the Mu'tazila, because they did not affirm attributes based upon the prophetic traditions, opposing the way of the companions, the tabi'een, and the imams of the salaf, and employed reason as their primary tool. They were unable to answer the Mu'tazila on the issue of Allah's speech. They convinced him that speech is such that it requires organs as well as motion, haraka, because speech is basically it requires succession in time. Yeah, so he could not rebut the Mu'tazila on the issue of the Quran being created because of this and innovated a new doctrine never known before, which is the doctrine of Kalam Nafsi.
They come up, you see, bid'ah leads to another bid'ah. Because the Mu'tazila, when they start refuting, al-Kullabiyya, when they start refuting al-Jahmiya wal-Mu'tazila, they refute them with what? With their tools. طيب? And now there's some doubt they couldn't refute. One of them, Allah speaking, subhanahu wa ta'ala, the way befit His Majesty. Now, they come up with a new thing. Kalam al-Nafsi. That Allah spoke within Himself. That's why one of the ulama of the Salaf walked past by a Kullabi, and he just walked past by him and he said nothing to him. He said, oh, so and so, why don't you say salam to me? He said, I said it, but inside me. You will kalam al-nafsi, how are you going to hear it? See? Subhanallah.
That's Allah's speech. So kalam nafsi, that Allah's speech is just a meaning in Allah's self. This is false because kalam as defined in the Arabic language is nutq mufhim, which must involve expression of words that are heard and provide a complete meaning.
This is the dahir of the Lugha al-Arabiyya. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned كتاب أنزلناه إليك مبارك ليدبروا آياته وليتذكر أولو الألباب. A book that we reveal to you to reflect upon it. You have a mufawwid that say we don't know the meaning. So Allah tells us to reflect upon something we don't know. Rahman we don't know is Rahman. It could be anything. Subhanallah. Qatallah. Al-ahwa. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alif lam ra تلك آيات الكتاب المبين إنا أنزلناه قرآن عربيا لعلكم تعقلون. We send down the Quran Arabic in order for you to reflect upon it.
Even there's another narration from the Ahadith, it goes on to say, نظر الله عبدا, or another narration, امرأ من سمع مقالتي ووعاها. Basically, may Allah, enlighten the face of the individual. Yeah? The one that hears my speech, yeah? ووعاها, understands it. And then towards the end of the hadith, he goes on to say, وبلغها, and conveys it. How is it possible something that which he heard, he understood, and then conveys, he can never understood in the very first place? Abu Yar also mentioned that as well. He goes on to say after that, obviously the lugha is nutq mufhim. The Salaf held that Allah speaks with a voice whose reality is unknown, like the rest of the attributes. And this is what the text, the nusus, indicate. However, Ibn Kullab was operating in the jurisdiction of Kalam and they fell prey to their doubts. He therefore innovated this new saying, not known in the Ummah, that which is, therefore he innovated this new saying, not known in the Ummah before that. In short, Ibn Kullab and the Kullabiyya affirmed the names of Allah, the 7 attributes, and the Sifat al-Khabariyya, face, hands, eyes. But they denied that Allah has chosen actions, af'al ikhtiyariyya, because this would imply upon that innovated ilm and kalam that Allah is subject to events, hawadith. Hence their approach towards the speech of Allah, kalam, and His pleasure, anger, and so on. All of these are actions tied to Allah's will, mashi'ah. The Kullabiyya eliminated the element of will in these attributes. The Kullabiyya was scorned by Imam Ahmad because they followed the way of Jahmiya Safwan in their speech about Allah. Having based it upon ilm al-kalam, they opened an evil door through their disputations after the Jahmiya and the Mu'tazila had been defeated. From this group was Al-Harith al-Mahasabi. Yeah?
You see, subhanallah, that Ahl-Sunnah already defeated what? Jahmiya al-Mu'tazila. With what? With Quran Sunnah. Kullabiyya now they want to refute it. After Mu'tazila Jahmiya became defeated, exposed, humiliated with what? Quran and Sunnah. Not the aql of Aristotle, not based upon the 10 categories of Aristotle. Now Kullabiyya came using their tool, the tools of the philosophy, and tried to refute them. They opened another door. What happened? Like they gave life back again to this al-bidah. They empowered al-bidah. After Imam Ahmad and the Imam of the Salaf exposed them and humiliate them.
It reminds me of sometimes when you have a car and the parts, in order to refine that car, needs to be original parts. But what happens sometimes when you get faulty parts that you think will do for a week or so, after a while, you know what happens?
Create another problem.
It creates another problem.
Allah Akbar, that's a good analogy.
And that original, asli car, even though for the time being, for the 3 weeks or the 4 weeks that you're driving around in it, those parts might have fit, but it also damages the car along the way. طيب, so the Kullabiyya was scorned by Imam Ahmad because they followed the way of Jahm bin Safwan in their speech about Allah and based it upon the Kalam. طيب, from this group was Al-Harith al-Muhasibi, who died 243 Hijri, and Hussein al-Karabisi, who died 248 Hijri. The theology, the Aqeedah of the Kullabiyya is actually the foundation for the theology of the Ashari and the Maturidiyya. The approach of the Ashari and the Maturidiyya towards Allah's chosen actions is actually taken from the Kullabiyya. And they have different renditions of the solution to the problem of Allah's chosen actions.
So here we have mentioned 3 groups so far. I think we have to stop here, inshallah. Yeah. And we continue next week. Goes on to speak about Al-Asha'ira, about Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari. Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari, may Allah have mercy upon him. And then the Asha'ira came after. Then about the Maturidiyya. Maturidis are Jahmiya in reality. So now what we learn, what we can benefit from this talk. If you hear someone says, if you say Allah is above, it's tahayyuz, makan, all of this is a kalam, it's not on the Quran and the Sunnah. It's been taken from the philosophers, from Aristotle and all of this. If someone has attribute and a body, he's murakkab and all of this, you understand? It's not the kalam of the Quran and the Sunnah. So now, for example, I'll give you an example why history is very important. Sheikh Abu Iyad mentioned there is a Christian, there is a Muslim preacher that debates. He's from Canada. His name Ali Shabir. Shabir Ali from Canada, yes. He's from Canada. He's old school, yes. Him, he was asked about the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That, that Allah knows something before it happens. And he said, no. He said, so what is being written in the preserved tablet is like Allah puts in possibilities. So for example, you go into either steal or kill or walk away from that crime. So Allah possibilities, but you choose which one. So there's possibilities Allah has written in the preserved tablets that you will do. Okay? So Allah never said you're going to do this. There's possibilities. Allah possibilities, either you're going to do this or He's going to do that. That's what has been written in the preserved tablet. Then the man chooses. What is the problem with this? What is it? Yes, he's negating Allah's ilm. But with another wording. He's saying exactly what the Qadariyya said in the past. Shaykh Abu Iyad mentioned that. Subhanallah, exactly. But look, because now Shaykh Abu Iyad mentioned, and I advise you, ikhwa, our Shaykh, may Allah give him a tawfiq and may Allah preserve him. He has not written these articles for us just for as beautification. For us to go and read it. We should be studying and reading to understand. Barakallahu feekum. So when he mentioned, I said, subhanallah. So I've had one brother saying in Speaker's Corner. But he said, this is another wording for Qadariyya of the early Qadariyya, negating Allah's ilm. So basically Allah knows which one is going to do. So it's possible, but Allah doesn't know which one. But in a different wording. Subhanallah.
Yeah, change the wording.
How you change the wording. See, our time, you have these followers of Jahm bin Safwan, the followers of philosophers, but they use different wording. But you don't know, as I say,
تغيير الأسماء لا يغير الحقائق.
بارك الله فيك. تغيير الأسماء.
What's it called again?
Four
principles. We studied
قواعد أربعة.
قواعد أربعة. Because that happened at the time Musa alayhi salam. اجعل لنا ذات أنواط كما لهم ذات أنواط. Yeah, that very ذات أنواط was on the tree, and by way of that, they called it something, but in actual fact it was just tabarruk. It was just tabarruk. They were just seeking blessings.
It's like subhanallah the story. Mustalahat. That's why I advised my brothers before, and I advise again. If you know Arabic language, listen to a talk by Ma'al Wazir Sheikh Saleh Al Sheikh. The name of the talk, nearly 3 hours. Al-Mustalahat. Al-Mustalahat, he said, Mustalahat, the Western world studied how Mustalahat, terminologies, has impact on people. And who they took it from? Iblis. Iblis, what he said to Adam, هل أدلك. Before I said Allah, I made mistake, he said هل أدلك على شجرة الخلد وملك لا يبلى. So he's telling to Adam, remember the tree that Allah that tree called is forbidden tree. Now Allah made it forbidden haram for Adam. But Iblis never came to Adam, alayhi salam, Abuna Adam, and he said to him, "Oh Adam, go eat from the tree which is haram." Where he said, "Hal adulluka ala shajarat al-khuld." Oh Adam, shall I not show you a tree of eternity? Wa mulk la yabla, and dominion that will never be everlasting. Look how he changed the name. So now he changed the name. So subhanallah, that's why the terminology is very, very dangerous. Subhanallah, when you say Allah timeless, you go, yeah, that time Allah is no, there's meaning behind it. That's why the Salaf, Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala, how you answer with Quran and Sunnah. Now he used to give analogies which goes in line with the Quran and the Sunnah. No, the analogy is based upon philosophy. Barakallahu feekum. So inshallah we continue next week inshallah ta'ala with the rest of the groups to know and understand these groups. They are not, remember we divide two groups. There is philosophers here, Naam, and the Jahmiya, and they are on the other side there is the followers of the prophets and messengers. So now you go and see Ashari, al-Kullabiyya, al-Maturidiyya, and so on. Are they following an Anbiya or Rusul, or they are following the philosophers, but they are hiding? But bi'idhnillah, we're going to expose them based upon a history. That's what As-Salaf what they used to say. The Salaf used to say, we expose the liars based upon history. Tarikh. At-Tarikh yafdahum. Barakallahu feekum. ونسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى to make us from those who follow the way of the Salaf inwardly and outwardly. وصلى الله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وسلم تسليما كثيرا. بارك الله فيكم. جزاكم الله خيرا.